Mikhail AïVANHOV. Life, May 17, 2020. Well, dear friends, I am very happy to be with you in this middle of May, as I told you. First of all, I send you all my blessings and love. Then, of course, I will have some things to tell you about this beautiful month of May, which is well underway now, and I hope that the script of this theatre scene suits you perfectly. I know that for many of you it is a nightmare what was written by the puppets. But it is precisely, I remind you that it is thanks to this nightmare that you will understand that you're asleep and that you have to wake up. And that the only awakening, as we have always said, is inside, that is to say, inside your body where all the answers are. And it is in that heart, in that ephemeral, illusory body, that is your only awakening at this time, that allows you to find yourself completely, I would say, with increasing ease as the final script of the simulacrum unfolds before your eyes, even if you feel you are participating in it. I remind you that all this is just a bad dream, a nightmare whose only purpose is to make you remember who you were before all these forms and all these worlds. It sounds simple enough to say, but it's even simpler to realize the instant you accept it. Whether you're a part of, I would say, in this theatre scene according to your occupations, your activities, your functions if you want, or whether you are simply the spectator, the observer of what happens in this memorable script that was written by the puppets. But also, I remind you that the other side of the play is the sacred, as Agapè had already shown you years ago. It's been 2 years since you've had a kind of synchronicity between what takes place on the theatre stage of the simulacrum and the other side of this play. Of course, it's the sacred, that is to say, the awakening to the truth. And this truth, of course, there is only one, and it is common to everyone. It is present with the same intensity whatever the state of your body, whatever you feel you are facing or living on this theatre stage. It is evident that everything is done in your life, in your intimacy, in your depth, in the place where you are on this planet, as well as the actions of the puppets, are only there to wake you up definitively so that you never again feel like dreaming or projecting any consciousness somewhere. You're anterior to consciousness, and you have today the possibility every minute, in every circumstance, to verify it with increasing ease and ease. Simply accept it and it will become the truth common to every form, to every consciousness and to every world. So, first of all, before making a point, precisely on this scene of simulacrum and on the scene of the sacred, we are going to, if you wish, dear friend, move forward with the questions that we did not finish last time, if there are some that bring something new. So, I'm listening to you. Of course, if the questions refer to things that have been said countless times, I will refer you to what has been said so as not to repeat myself and overload my speech. So, I am listening to you, dear friend. Brother. Well, then, first question from a sister. Do our cells carry the information of our becoming? I repeat a little, of our becoming. Brother. Do our cells carry the information of our becoming? The cells carry all the information. But whatever the information of all dimensions, of all physiologies, of all forms, there is one essential point, and that is that your cells obviously contain the information of time zero. It was the same thing in plant, animal and human cells. And it is this principle of zero time, this information of zero time which is Agapè, which is, of course, inscribed in all parts of life. We told you that you were space, you were not a form. But you are the intelligence of the light and you're Agapè. Of course, from one end to the other of what has been called creation and evolution, from the most primitive cell to the most evolved cells that do not belong to the carbonaceous world but to the silicon world. All living cells, all that is life, is the bearer of the information of time zero, of the good news, and therefore, of Agapè. This is a certainty, and I repeat what I have just said. Today it is very easy to enter into it, not to be abused, raped, shocked by the circumstances of this world as well as by the circumstances of your life. This salutary shock, which has been called the shock of humanity, is also the infallible way to wake up, even if for many of you still need to wait for the celestial sign of this month of May. This is what I had to say about this question. All life is the bearer of love, every cell is the bearer of love without any restriction and without any possibility of withdrawing it, even by the radar waves, the millimeter waves, the harmful waves that have been used by the bad boys to try to keep you in the cage. But there is no cage that holds when the truth of time zero emerges from you, because there you remember who you are and the nightmare can no longer have the slightest hold on you. I know that Head Chief and many of you have shared much during these months of April, and especially May, the information about the masquerade of this world, about the who holds the strings. That is to say, the total enslavement much more than the confinement within a dissociated world, that is to say, the enslavement as it had been explained more than 10 years ago, in the named circuits and that you name today, transhumanists, that is to say, to make the consciousness penetrate into the binary electronic circuits. That is the binary beast. The binary beast, the first beast, is, of course, everything you call the internet, everything you call your social networks that today make reality. We talked many years ago about conscious co-creation. Today, it is a question of recreating in this conscious co-creation the memory of Agapè, of time zero, or of love with a capital L if you prefer. And this is exactly what is emerging, that is, you are coming out of the dream, and often it has been said by IDADE, by others, that all this creation, all this consciousness, in all these dimensions, even spramental, was a swindle and something that was just passing. You never pass. We have repeated it to you in every possible and imaginable way. It is up to you to live it and to verify it once again with ease, from the moment you do not resist, from the moment you embrace the unspeakable of all that has been revealed, you realize that you are not concerned, that you are outside this theater scene, and that it is you, all of us together, who have created the stream at this theater scene. And as I remind the new ones, it concerns all dimensions, all worlds and all consciences without any exception. The Alpha has joined the Omega and the Omega has joined the Alpha. Be assured that these words are not words to make it pretty, but to incite you, to invite you, in the face of adversity as you could name it, in the face of the horrors of this world and of this creation, to enter into yourself to see really and in a totally truthful way that this has no substance, and that all emotions, all the thoughts, all the disgust and nausea that you may have about the architecture of society in this world, in fact, are only there to really and concretely awaken you to the truth that you are, which I tell you again, is prior to all forms and all consciousness. It's extremely simple. You have to have the information already. So, of course, you've seen everything that's come to light, and I'll take this opportunity to also make my presentation on this issue in part. You've seen everything that's been revealed, all the architecture, the dark resonant links, as I call them, that would want to prevent you from remembering. To do that, you have to get your finger out of the gears. As Brother K used to say, it is not really a sign of good health to feel good in this society, in this world and in any world. Once you have discovered the truth, you are free from all subjection to consciousness and form, even independently of this world. That is what you have to think about, if I may say so. Put the equation inside your head and accept that the answer is already known. It is already known, you had simply forgotten it, as we have been telling you insistently for more than a year. The last keys you have had then, are the last name and the first name. You have had many things that have come to light and have been lived by an ever-increasing number of brothers and sisters on this planet, haven't you? And you also find that you have brothers and sisters, perhaps even in your family, who will never see the truth until the time of the call, if I may say so, of the heavenly sign. Because they are not equipped to cross, if I may say, to accept, to embrace. To embrace life can have no limits even within the masquerade, even within the horror that is revealed to you. I remind you that in all the teachings that were called spiritual, it was always emphasized on the mind and on the emotions. That is to say, if you suffer an emotion in relation to what you are living or what is happening on the masquerade stage, it is because you are not free. You just haven't crossed over. You stop the emotions and you identify with them. It's exactly the same with your thoughts. It's exactly the same for what you see. It is exactly the same for what you feel, perceive, feel or react to. As long as you're in there, you are not available to embrace the present instant and the truth of Agapè in the instant. Everything else is just a chimera. So evidently, the bad boys are trying to drag you into this final battle. But this battle is a dream. The subtlety is to see that there is a battle and that even if you're involved in this battle in a personal capacity, as, how do you say, the one who is going to alert the others or the one who has something to solve at home or in his life, all of this is just pretexts. Accept it and you discover the truth and you are the truth. We insist and will insist more and more on this. Everything else that happens, even what is going on the puppet level, is a total masquerade. And besides, it is not for nothing that they try to mask you, that is to say, to put another mask on the ego. What's ego? It's the mask, it's the identity, it's the profession, it's the social role, it's everything that we adhere to in this life and that makes us unhappy. Whether it's money, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's husband or wife, even the twin flame. All attachment is suffering. Today you have the total demonstration of this, which has been repeated for thousands of years in all spiritual currents, illusory, of course, but which have conveyed a certain form of truth. The naked and absolute truth cannot be encumbered with emotions, with mind, with evolution, with form, that is to say, whatever horror you are going to witness, it is precisely that horror that makes you understand, by living it, that it is not true. And it will all end as we have always said, whether it is Bide, whether it is me, whether it is Ebba and whether it is other speakers, it will all really end in a great burst of laughter, because the script is perfect. Perfect in its synchronicity and perfect in the horror, in the division, in the separation, in the suffering, which are nothing but simulacrum. So, all of this, if you will, is happening. Everyone lives it in his own way, but the result is always the same. It is the discovery of the truth and the living of the truth and understanding. I repeat to you this thing which is essential. As long as you question yourself in an important way with emotional or mental reaction, you are not 100% available to live the truth of time zero of the present instant and become space and no longer be subject to any form, to any scenario that you have written. We have all written this same final script for all dimensions right here on this earth. And that is what you have been living already for some time. This year 2020 is really the year of what you might call the final judgment or the final judgment. But you laugh about it when you find out the truth. There is nothing to judge. There is no one to condemn. There is only to recognize the truth, that is to say that it is a dream and nothing else, because it is not immutable. Then, the point of view of the observer at the heart of heart, at Shantinalaya, at the abode of supreme peace, is very exactly what allows you to remain in this immutability, which is not an indifference as Bide used to say, or even a divine indifference, it is the truth. The whole strategy of the ego, of society, of spirituality, is to maintain yourself permanently in the dream by the reaction, by the search for good and evil, by knowing what is true or what is not true. How do you want to find the slightest bit of truth in something that is just passing by? And the jokers are passing by, no matter what it looks like and no matter what your point of view is. So of course they're talking about a vaccine to kill the nasty virus, but you know full well it's a total manipulation. You have enough scouts with real, concrete facts that are not there to get you into war or rebellion or acceptance of the unacceptable. But to accept yourselves beyond any role. From there, your vibratory rise, what we called at the time, the spramental with the crowns, with the song of the soul in the left ear, the netta, with the siddhis, the powers of the soul, with the crowns that are active with the receptions of energy, of vibration of love and of time zero, are only there to show you that this nightmare has no weight despite its apparent harshness. And, be certain that everything that has been written cannot be changed and must take place there, now. When I took you the example of watching a movie and you could press the stop, quick forward or quick return button, it is your consciousness that does this according to how you judge, how you observe and how you behave at what is happening in your life, where you are now but also at the level of the planet and at the level of the universes. When the celestial sign comes forth, of course, you will no longer be able at that time to do as the vast majority of humanity is still sleeping and hoping for a vaccine or wearing masks. This astral particle, which is called a virus, is nothing more than the consequence of adhering to the dream. This adherence to the dream that you call it greed, need for money, need for a husband or wife, need for children, need for a social role, are only chimeras. Of course, you have to assume it, you have created it, but you have to realize that it has no reality. It is precisely by playing the only real accessible way that you discover that it is a script, a scenario that has no real substance and is simply the agent of your awakening. So, yes, the viruses, the masks, what we call the New World Order, are only there to shrink, I would say, the walls of the prison, to make you really suffer until you understand that there are no more prisoners than walls, quite simply. It's an exceptional opportunity, but it's been written. That's why they're bad boys. As for those who live agape, who are agapians, well, for those, they know very well that they just have to witness this awakening, the awakening of this nightmare. So don't fight against the virus, even if indeed Head Chief and others have told you about innumerable remedies that actually exist in nature with very simple things. It is somehow responsible for this anomaly. I'm asking you for 30 seconds because I think there was a ringing. No, it's okay. We can go back without any problem. There's someone, a puppet, who must have had fun making a phone call on this phone during the canalization. That's funny, isn't it? We're trying to distract or disturb, but that's also the intelligence of the light, you see. There is not even a call like that. Impromptu is something that is planned and predictable. Steiner talked a lot about it when he was alive. I had the opportunity to talk about it only a few months ago, so I won't go into it again. I remind you that a lot of information has been brought to you, whether through the puppet media, through your social networks. You had to literally digest, acquiesce to all these horrors, to finally discover you free and true, beyond your form, your script, and your individual script that you wrote. And remember that even if you find the script you wrote absolutely horrible, but it's exactly what you wanted to wake up to. Because maybe there was too much interest in that form, in the material, in the money, in the society, in your family, in your children, in your parents, in your friends, in your brothers, in your sisters. There is no one, I repeat, there is only you who dreams. And that is not a philosophical point of view, it is the strict truth, which is within your reach, which is there for everyone, because you are playing, in what is imposed on you, in the way you react, in the way you manage, as it were, with all these elements, which are in fact increasingly contrary to the freedom, even when it has been amputated, that you had to live in this world. And that's how you wake up, so don't be reluctant. Don't rebel against anything, instead, see what motivates your reactions. Murdering a child is horrible, Satanism is horrible, but all that is done to shake you up, literally, so that you cannot rely on any narrative or visible element of this world or any world. When you get tired of looking outside, I don't know, for a savior, a support, a help, in relation to a lack, whatever it is, whatever its nature, then at that moment, when you stop getting agitated, the great silence comes. And you will already notice as the days of this month of May advance, that absolutely all the manipulations of this world have been revealed. There remains one to be revealed, but which will be reserved for the moment of the celestial sign, whatever its nature. During this month of May, it is to see who is holding the strings behind the puppets, that is to say, to see who has finally done the work of public salvation by locking up the consciousness at the stage where you are in the locked worlds, which allows the awakening as a kind of final awakening. All this is not true. All this has no substance. Even the most justified emotions, even the cries of horror of these horrors that you are shown and told about what is happening in this world, must be actually seen, but passed through and digested. Right behind, as always, you are free. And as soon as you are free, of course, of your own emotions, of your own effects, of your own suffering, then at that moment, and it is very easy, you naturally turn to the heart of the heart. You'll live Agape, you'll live the black hole, you'll live the white paradise, and I know that countless of you see this white paradise, around you, in your bed, at night looking outside, and sometimes during the day. It is the truth. There is another reality that is superimposed on the old reality. But this new reality has no future, even if you have visions of it. It is the pure and naked joy of the present moment in Agape. Everything else can no longer interact, can no longer divert you, whether you are suffering, whether you are in your garden, whether you are locked up, terrorized with a mask, all that you are no longer fooled by it. Of course you know it, and here it is not a question of egregor, it is more a question of mass consciousness. Obviously the number that was necessary for the changeover, since we are talking about the changeover, has been reached for many years already. But there was, and I have already spoken about it, not at the level of the awakened this time, but at the level of the whole earth, there is a kind of critical mass of consciousness that must see the truth. It does not mean accepting it or being able to cross it and lie the absolute, but to open your eyes. Because when, and the number is already reached in this month of May, when enough human beings have opened their eyes, the lie, the sham, can no longer stand. It is not a question of going to oppose as they would like the puppets, to fight against them, but to have seen the truth behind all appearances. Yes, the shift of consciousness, the shift of the poles, geomagnetic and physical, of course is underway. And of course has already begun for many months, many weeks, and is growing stronger every day. You see it had been explained at such length by the activity of the elements. You see the fire, water, air and earth moving everywhere. It is also the emotions, the four primary emotions of the human being that express themselves to the fullest, whether it is fear, whether it is joy, whether it is anger, whatever, or sadness, whatever. These four emotions, when they are played out in you in an intense way, necessarily lead to the truth, whether you want it or not, whether you suspect it or not. So the changeover is in progress, it is actuated, everything is happening and is rushing in this physical plane. As we have been telling you for several months now, you can see how many ships of all dimensions are above your cities. You can see that you are hearing more and more about civilizations, or at least about extraterrestrials, because it is inevitable. So beyond everything that is played out on the stage, whether it is extraterrestrial or nightmare of bad boys, Satanists, it does not matter, because all these are elements of the awakening. So the tipping point is already well underway, if I may say so. It's at the tipping point, if you will, and there's a point in time, given the critical mass of brothers and sisters, but also organic portals that have opened the eyes, that allows this tipping point to be crossed, almost permanently. But for this, we must wait for the totality of the conjunction of the signs as they were written by the prophets, but also in the Apocalypse of St. John, but also in all the so-called sacred books, and, of course, all this is taking place at this very moment. No one, provided that he has looked at the Apocalypse at least once, or at least a few times at the prophecies, can but realize that we are, and you are, all together in the same bath. In this same bath of revelations, in this same bath of horrors that led to Agape. There, it is inexorable, inescapable, and it is in progress. So once again, for those who would not experience it, it is that you have not accepted, and attention on the meaning of acceptance. Accepting means being present. It does not mean reacting. You can react because it is horrible when you are taught things of the content that you are now exposed to, whether it is in your personal life, but I am talking rather and especially about the collective aspect, isn't it? When you see that, it's horrible, but it's precisely the horror that led you to agape. So of course it's a mystery. As long as you try to understand it, you can't live it completely. First of all, there is what we have called for years the sacrifice that allows the resurrection. But the resurrection, it is in the moment, it is not in a future world, it is not in the event that is happening in great steps in the sky, but it is something that is there in a global way, in all sectors and all parts of your life, in relation to yourself, to the functioning of your body, to the functioning of your thoughts, to the functioning of your birth sign. See, and let's all see how we've been conditioned by the stars, how we've been directed, how it's been written to bring us to this point of total resilience. So yes, you will rock more and more at all levels, in your last attachments, in your last fears, in your last identifications, to a character, to a story, to a dream, to what you want, all that does not exist. And the more horrible it is or the more joyful it is, the result will be the same. You will discover the freedom that you are. And you see, even the birds agree with what I say. Don't they? Then, dear friend, we can proceed with the questions. Brother. Well, it has been largely answered, I think, to the last question that one can, if you wish, ask for fun. Then another question. Brother. I repeat. I think the last question has been largely answered. Yes. We can ask this question, however, if you want to ask it for fun. Let's go. Brother. So here's a question from a brother. Why did you choose such a tortuous ending when it would have been so simple to end it softly and with a laugh, all in catalepsy and no choice? Sweetness never wakes you from a dream. We all know dreams, we want them to last all the time, and consciousness can never stop by itself. She says she is confronted with terrible things, things that take you out of your usual frame of reference, that must take you out of your impulses, your desires, your projections, your memories, your traumas as well as your joys. And for some it is very easy and for others it is very hard. But you are right, we have explained it enough in every possible way that I don't see what to add to it. As long as you believe that what happens to you individually, to your body, to your life or in this world is real, you cannot be free. And yet that is the only reality you have to accept. Accept that it is a dream and the nightmare ends. Accept that the nightmare is just passing and you are free. It's really a mechanism, it's pure mechanics. Say yes as Ebba said and you're free. That yes is not a yes to horror, it is a yes to the inconsistency of horror, because it is only passing. It is that point of view that brings you face to face with the truth, and not your stories, not your past, not the resolution of any element of your character, not any interpretation of a dream, or projection into some future, of a new earth, new dimensions, or new life. The nightmare stops. And all life within the form, even in the most pleasant, the most vibrant, the highest dimensions, is ultimately just something that passes. As IDADE said, the universe will disappear, that you will always be there. And that is exactly what is happening. Do you have any more questions? Brother. No. So if we have finished the questions, I'm going to go over your panorama. You're on Earth when you're incarnated, on the eve of the establishment of what you call a dictatorship, that is to say a total subjection to the ideas, thoughts, wills of those who think they rule the world by money, by particular networks, by occult movements, by money above all, by the constraint of the other and by the suffering of the other. Of course, this is real and a nightmare, but this nightmare is what wakes you up definitively from all sleep, from all dreams. Accept it and you live it, it is instantaneous. and many of you are aware of this. This does not mean that you should stay and say nothing. I said that you will find that silence is much more profitable than stating these sordid truths. But nevertheless, among you, some of you continue to post this news in relation to, I am talking about vaccines, Satanism, in relation to the airwaves, in relation to everything that is now being revealed. Because it is important that you be shocked, and you will be shocked, I would say, more and more as the days that are coming in this month of May. Of course, the material conditions of your lives, after a pseudo lull, will of course deteriorate, until you wake up, until the moment when the sign from heaven, whatever it is, will come to pick you up, to astound you, so that you will never again be fooled by the dream. But it is not yet the morning and the end of the dream, it is simply, you all know, and you will know that you are dreaming, and you will have very little time left, I would say, to disidentify yourself, to disengage from what you still believe to be vital or essential in this world. This world is a total fraud. Creation is a swindle, as IDADE said, total. We ancients made us, the ancients, with I would say the means at hand and what was accessible during our incarnation. As you know, we talked about it at length. There was only IDADE, by the way, who will come to express himself after me, who was the only one to make so much noise in relation to the Absolute, the Parabrahman, and the Shantinalaya, and to say that everything was a swindle, that the evolution, the spiritual garments, the spiritual movements were all flawed from the start, were all false. But we didn't have the means, when I was still incarnated at the end, in the middle of the 80s, to realize that, even if among the ancients and especially the stars, some of them had a kind of prescience, a premonition, that all that was nothing real. So, this is the first part of this beautiful month of May. It was the revelations in all directions. The second part of this beautiful month of May will consist of the last part of the revelations, that is to say what was not accessible to you according to your media, your social networks, but on the level of the invisible. What was this force that we called the Ekans, Yolde Barrett, who maintained the confinement? I won't go back over the historical notions of the connections, if I may say so, between the genetic mothers and the Dracos, falsifiers. I remind you that the Dracos are very luminous, but all that, in the end, served only one purpose, the final scene, the nightmare of the dream, in order to get out of the dream, and never sleep or dream again. We have always told you that we are inside you. It is the strict truth. You're all characters, all forms, all dimensions, all consciousness without exception. The consciousness does not belong to you alone. Those who still dream of this have not understood anything. They have not restored themselves. They are still in the dream of a new race, a new earth, a new golden age. But Christ had told you, my kingdom is not of this world. And the puppets would like Christ to come back to tell them that their kingdom is in this world. And as the biological body is too fragile, we are going to return consciousness to the immortality of electronic circuits, but all that cannot exist. An electronic circuit wears itself out. Of course, you cannot wear yourself out. You are never born, you have never died. It is not a play on words, it is the strict truth that it is up to you to live. At that moment you will see that gradually the revelations of the horror of this world will no longer concern you at all. And you are indeed, through this confinement that you are living, in the best possible conditions, not to have time and do what you like, or on the contrary to have the impression of wasting your time, because time is money, or because you have the impression of not being able to go on the beach, or in the air, but all that is still the dream, all that is still an illusion, even the new worlds, even the new earth which some still gargle that it is there, but I believe that those ones do not see clearly. Because if you want to see the nightmare as it is in its architecture, and especially as I was saying in its invisible aspect, that is to say who holds the strings, who are the Ekans. you are going to see it, you are going to experience it, there, very 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 soon during this beautiful month of May, and you will not be able to, and there obviously I am not talking about the celestial sign, but also about what is going to happen in your consciousness, which is already happening, where nothing can make sense anymore, and yet you are not depressed, and yet you are not sad either, and you are not in exuberant joy either, but you see that the dream is unfolding and you can't change anything about it, and any coping strategies you can pursue will only reinforce the nightmare that is written, and it is part of the intelligence of light. See no shadow or duality in it. The illumination of the light, its intelligence, of this light, must be total. There must not remain the slightest corner of shadow, the slightest corner that is not illuminated. And it is the lighting that is the understanding. It is not to dissect the chain of icons, the chain of commandments, or who are those who direct in the invisible, even earthly, all this cinema, all this mishmash as you will say, that you observe from everywhere. You are discovering life, and you discover that you are not your life or this life in this world or in any world, and there you are free. Before you are not free, you are still conditioned, by the hope of a future, by the hope of an improvement, by the hope of the end and the prophetic apocalyptic events that you are living, but all that is only pretexts. Once again, if you do not live it for the moment, you will live it when it will be war, when it will be famine, when it will be invisible horrors, demons that will howl in the night, as it is written in the Apocalypse of St. John and in many prophets in all religious or spiritual cultures. That's how you wake up, and as I said, even if for the moment it seems tragicomic, if I may say so, all this will end with a great burst of laughter. Some of you have already laughed, because you have seen the masquerade, you have seen the light, but most of all you have seen and lived that you were prior to the light and therefore prior to any form. You see, there is no need to evolve. Of course, for 10 years we had been talking about a vibratory rise, and this vibratory rise, even if we no longer talk about it, is effectively what will immunize you from the lethal radiation that will be connected to the earth, from war, from the virus, from animosity, from conflicts, from lack. As soon as you are awake, you are free, even if you seem to lack freedom in this world. True freedom is not to move in this world or to earn money, or to enjoy yourself, or to make love, it is to be love. And being love has no component to see, to do, to compare, with this world as with any other world. From there you play your role, which you have written, but you are no longer affected by it. You're, as IDADE said, there, in the divine indifference where everything is you, really and concretely, and as everything is you, you cannot judge yourself, you cannot condemn yourself, because everything that is visible on the outside is also on the inside. That is to say that the sacrifices of children, Satanism, are also in each of us, in our most basic constitution, at the level of DNA, of course. Earlier we were talking about DNA, about the cell, saying that there was both time zero, Agapè's information, and the information of the nightmare, in equal parts, you see. There's no one to judge or convict. You have to see clearly and go through all this, even the most horrible things, because that's how you love, that's how you forgive, and that's how it is. As Christ said, if you are given a slap, turn the other cheek, because the second slap will wake you up for good, because you thought you had been given one slap and then 2 slaps. He has no other alternative. I take this image and this representation, because it's not necessarily a metaphor or anything, but it's very real. When you're tired of getting slapped, when you're tired of seeing the walls of the prison shrink, the windows with the bars disappear, when there's nothing left, when everything is destroyed from the dream, you're the only one left. The destruction is only apparent. It exposes the truth, whether it is the destruction of your body, the destruction of society, the destruction of this world. How can that which is never born be destroyed? Think about it. If you believe you were born, then you believe you will die. It's as simple as that. If you accept that you were never born, then you will never die. It's logical, it's unstoppable, and it's the only truth. So during the days, the few little weeks that remain until the end of May, I invite you, moreover you do it spontaneously, after this exuberant period of revelations, it is advisable to enter more and more into this inner joy that does not depend on any world, neither on you nor your character, neither on your memories, nor on your future. This is how you live the present instant at time zero. It is in the hustle and bustle, in the chaos of the world that the puppets promised you, that you find yourself. There's nothing to judge, there's just one more time to accept and cross over. I have to say that the exuberant part of the revelation of these last few weeks is going to be easier now, that is to say that you won't react to it anymore, you won't even want to talk about it anymore, because, I would say, the cup is full. And when the cup is full, you have to empty it, you have to drink it. It is the bitter cup, it is the cup that actually precedes the resurrection, this time at the collective level and no longer at the individual level. Be serene, be tranquil, whether you are locked up in your apartment, whether you are immersed in nature, makes no difference from now on. Certainly there were circumstances that you had written, different for each one, but today all these scenarios come together in time zero. Time zero in this year 2020, of course, and from time zero, well there is nothing more because, who would still want to play with the consciousness by living in the abode of supreme peace? No one. Those who are still projecting into a new land or a new dimension have not lived Shanti-Nilaya. They have lived the vibrations, they have lived the fire of the heart, but they have not lived the peace of consciousness. They refuse the consciousness as every consciousness refuses it as long as it has not found itself in the supra-consciousness and in the consciousness itself. So again, do not judge anything. Everything that happens for everyone, and even in your family for the one who would suffer martyrdom or who would be in a fatal illness for the ephemeral, it does not matter. You're exactly in the very good place to live it, you're exactly where you wrote it. It also answers the question, one of the last questions, why didn't we write a nicer script? But the dream is nice, and when you dream something nice, you take it for real. On the other hand, when it becomes a nightmare and there are reactions, well in spite of yourself it participates in your awakening. But don't feed the reactions. I am telling you all this in relation to what will happen from the second half of May in which you and we have returned. Because we are evidently closest to you, you see it everywhere, you have information everywhere about our presence in the ships, whether it is the motherships of the Marian dimension, whether it is our ship of the Melchizedecs, or of the entire intergalactic confederation of free worlds, who come for the resolution of the dream, and in the same way the Ekans are also there for the resolution of the dream. And no one role is superior to another, because they were all written by and for the same purpose, which is the awakening to zero time and truth, which does not depend on any world, any form, any concept, any consciousness and any life spent within the dream. It is time to rejoice, yes. And this rejoicing that is promised to you will become more and more evident as you move into, and I think it is easy in this time, even for those who have children, moments of interiority. I am not talking about meditation, I am not talking about prayer, I am not talking about a vibratory rise as we did a few years ago for many years, but simply about this silence, this total acceptance of what is, because you can't change it no matter what you do. But on the other hand, you can find your way through it. And that's why it's like that and not otherwise. So yes, every day that's going to happen, I would say for this month of May, but then the time that this year 2020 will last, whether it goes until December 31st or the final zero time arrives before that, it doesn't matter because you see clearly. And the clearer you see and the more you are in this beatitude that does not depend on any vision, on any projection, on any consciousness, on any character, on any world. It is extremely easy. You see, if you were to retain something of everything I am saying today, remember, it is extremely simple. The more complicated it seems to you, the simpler it is. It's the mind whispering that you. It is the circumstances of your life, of your body, of this world, that are trying to attract you, with less and less efficiency moreover, towards the dark, towards limitation, towards suffering, towards pain, towards horror. But all that is only done to awaken, to wake you up and participate, as you know, with the example I took of the film, that we accelerated the scrolling, or we reversed, we moved the film backwards if we weren't in sync. Today you will want to press stop, that is to say the end of the film. So the end of the film, you have accelerated it, you continue to accelerate it without moving, without asking for anything, without expecting anything, without hoping for anything, that is to say by being perfectly present to what you are living in the instant you are living it, no more and no less. Whether it is by going shopping, whether it is, even if it is not the season, by pruning your roses, by listening to the song of a bird, by listening to a brother or a sister, be true. You are nothing of all that is said, you are nothing of all that passes through you, you are no shape that you see, you are no world that you see. You are free. Real and concrete. You just have to accept it, and it is still curious that it is in this world, where, of course, what I have called the enslavement of the bad boys and the most evident, the most visible, the most constraining, that you have and that you must, because you have no other possibilities, turn to yourselves and live the truth. So do not judge appearances, do not judge anyone, because the one who sacrifices a child is also you in another life, in another time, in another space-time, in another arrangement of the intelligence of light. You see, it is really like that. Then of course, once the first fears have passed, the first acts of being offended, of being shaken, you understand that nothing can shake you anymore, because you have always been there, regardless of what your character is playing, regardless of what this world is playing. It's a game, certainly morbid, but it's a game. It has no substance, I repeat, it has no extension. It's the moment when the final scene, as head chief would say, takes shape every minute, every hour, every day a little more, and sends you back, of course, as I said, to the prophecies, but above all, sends you back to yourself beyond all responsibility, beyond all guilt. It is these events, these real facts that are taking place at this moment, that have taken place on this earth in the shelter of the light, that are illuminated. And it is a great joy. This means that even if you suffer in an extreme way, from the revelations, from your emptiness, from your body, from your relationships, this extreme suffering can only end, be solved, by agape. And that is how it is for everyone, and you may have noticed it around you, and you will see it more and more. So of course, the arrangement of this half-time of the 2 times 1 time half a time, and the emergence of what is called in the apocalypse of St. John the second beast, is exactly what you are playing at the moment. The battle that is described of all against all in the revelation of St. John has begun. At the moment it is not yet at its peak, but this is what is taking place during this month of May. But it is also the acme of your rediscovery, it is the acme of the possibility of finding yourself, of being what you truly are beyond form and consciousness. You see, it is in its darkest, gloomiest aspects of the predation of consciousness that you discover that you are not consciousness, and that you are anterior to it, and you live it. That is what you are going to be promised. So be always in that acceptance, that embrace. And now, I think many things have been illuminated about this world. There is only one left, actually, I would say the thinking head, which is called the beast, both the first and the second, of the apocalypse. It is the intimate Machiavellian and totally anti-life and anti-sleep of this nightmare. But the nightmare puts an end to the dream never puts an end to the dream. Of course, they wake up in the morning, but it's not about waking up in the morning. It's about waking up from all these stories of alternating day and night, man and woman, the primordial androgynous. It is the return to the unity lived internally, whatever the character says, what he gestures, what he suffers, or what he has as money or as husband or wife, whatever. You see, this is how you will really verify it every minute of your life, and therefore, it is an invitation to recollection, to return to oneself, which is neither prayer, nor meditation, nor petition, but is the gift of oneself, that is, the acceptance of giving oneself completely and of giving oneself to the truth, to be freed from illusion. That is all that will be played in the coming days and weeks. So of course, I'll be back, I don't know when yet, but after this May and June, depending on the scenario that was played, of course, and IDADE will come after me today to tell you that I think he thinks the same thing, but in a different way, right? But rest assured that the more horrible it becomes, and it is, the more horrible it becomes on the outside, whether it be the basic activity, whether it be the activity of society and those who think they still control society, it will be catastrophic. But this catastrophe will bring him back to the liveness of Agapè. When you are tired of suffering, then you will come back to the truth. When you are tired of projecting better moments later, you will return to the truth. When you are tired of missing something, you will return to the truth. When you are tired of fighting against your mind, your ego, your stories, your characters and what is revealed, you will turn to the truth. It will be there for itself. That's what this change is all about. It's much more than a turnout or up and down and right and left, it's much more than that. It's seeing that there was never any inside or outside, that there was never any horror or joy, that there was never any fear, that there was never any sadness, but that everything was temporary, real and concrete. So I invite you in these last 15 days of May to enter as much as possible into this inner silence, which is not the silence of words, which is not the silence of knowing what is happening, but it is a silence of acceptance, a silence that leads you to the beatitude of the instant, you see. And the more chaotic it will be, and I assure you that it will be, the happier you'll be, the more the final masquerade and the masquerade of those who pull the strings will be revealed to you, the more you will laugh about it, because it is something very laughable in every sense of the word. So I say to you that, as for me, I will come to see you after this month of May, once again according to the heavenly signs and the human signs, to show you with my next coming that, indeed, what I am telling you today is really, concretely in this plan, happening. So do not make me say that I have given you a date, because every day from now on is the date, for each one of you in every minute, you have all the possibilities to enter as long as you no longer feed anything outside. Of course, you must feed this body, if you can, of course, you must also feed what you have as a function in your family, in your life, in society. But you know that your kingdom is not of any world, nor of this world, because you are true, and that from that moment, all the explanations that can be given, either about the functioning of the universe, of the dimensions, or the functioning of the hidden within this world, make no difference. You are the way, the truth and the life. You are beyond this world as you are beyond anyone else's. And you are, above all, previous to any world, and you are, at the same time, all the worlds and all the consciousnesses. It is not a concept, it is an understanding and an living experience that is going to become more and more, I would say, in relation to your life, no matter how important it is or how trivial it is. If you are without a job, without a profession, without an activity, it does not matter. This is exactly what you are participating in, both in the dream and in the conscious co-creation that allows you not to be fooled any longer by creation itself. It is Shanti-Nilaya, it is this oneness, and it is this Christ state that has been so described by some of the stars that you are, and we see it, more and more of you are touching, living and settling. Remember that the more you accept to see, the more you accept this horror, which does not mean to consent, which does not mean simply not to react, but it is really to digest all this disguise, a little bit like you did with the bars of perpetual love, with the Agapè interdimensional spatial resonance, or the heart-to-heart Agapè, as Agapè explained. At your given time there is no transmitter, there is no receiver. They are the space between the transmitter and the receiver, and they encompass the transmitter and the receiver as there is no one. Everything in your life is an excuse. Everything is an excuse on the screen of the world, either through your official media, which all have red noses, or if it is the real information on their social networks. At some point, and it's at that point, you will no longer be able to distinguish, I would say, what is true from what is false, because what is false and what is true is not real. At that moment you will understand that it is useless. The work which he had done, which was useful, is no longer useful today. All those who needed to know about the farce are. Those who do not want to see it, from now on will wait for the celestial sign of this month of May, specifically 2020, this celestial sign that is already visible before your eyes, but that will, of course, increase. Of course, all this will be accompanied by everything I have told you about the activity of the elements, but also about the particular symptoms within your bodies. Your heart, it burns. Others are no longer burning, they have already consumed everything. Those are in total peace, whatever happens to them, whatever happens to the world, whatever happens to the heavenly signs. It is up to you not to judge yourself, but to appreciate and measure yourself without judging yourself, by the intensity of your stillness, by the intensity of your tranquility. You measure the truth that you live. The truth is one and absolute. Of course, it appears at once, but there is a gradation between what still it is in this world, what is seen, and the truth that is not of any world. And in each of you, this is playing out right now in an intense way, I would say, and especially in the last 2 weeks that you have yet to go through this month of May. This is what I had to say. I will not be with you for long, and I think after me, after a little break, you'll have Bida coming to blow in your ears and in your hearts. As for me, I transmit to you all my blessings, all my accompaniment and all my peace to spend these 15 days of May that you have left. I also transmit to you the blessing of all the intergalactic confederation of free worlds as the great commander of the Melchisedeks. Remain in peace, be assured that all this is a dream, and you will be assured simply during these 15 days of May, in fact, very intense internally and externally. I tell you that soon, in the month of June. Through Jean-Luc Ayoun. Les Transformations. Spanish translation, LMF.